But before I let Professor Wolff go, I know we have like 5 minutes left with him. So I feel like if we didn't address immigration, that we really would be remiss in this conversation. So
absolutely.
Now I will say, I personally believe that there will be an incredible humanitarian cost to deporting 11 million people. But I'm hoping that the cold, hard economic facts of enacting this policy might cause people to reconsider their support for mass deportation. So I was hoping maybe you could share some of your thoughts on the economic impact of this policy, what it would cost for the U.S. government to try to do this, what the repercussions would be on the average American. I mean, if people are worried about the price of eggs and bacon, deporting the people who work in, agriculture and food production doesn't seem to me to be the way to lower those prices. But what would you say would be some of the economic consequences?
Yes. Before I do, let me also say, and maybe I'm wrong here, I hope not. For better or worse, and often it's worse, but sometimes it's better, America is a very religious place. And all of the major religions here, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they all say that what Allah or God or whatever it is you believe in wants you to do is to welcome the refugee, to open your arms, to open your heart, to give him a meal, to do all the things that the Bible and other holy books tell us to do. I think you're going to see, maybe sooner than you imagine, an immense reaction in this country, which will be driven by a well-deserved guilt on the part of this population for what they are doing. And, I feel that as strongly as I feel the guilt that will descend on the Jewish people for what has happened in Gaza. But putting that aside, here's the economics that you've asked about. The Department of Homeland Security says there's somewhere between 10 and 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. So as an economist, let me make one thing clear. We are a rich country of 330 million people. The economic problems we have, which are severe, could not ever have been caused by 10 to 12 of the poorest people on the planet. The notion that the immigrants are a cause of the problems we face is stone cold ridiculous. It may be a clever scapegoating, it may work to get you votes, but it has nothing to do with reality. Number two, there are certain industries that concentrate undocumented immigrants. Agriculture is a big one. The restaurant business is a big one. Yes. Construction is another big one. And then there's a whole host of other industries, but those are the big ones. In those industries, undocumented immigrants are a major part of the labor force. Not only that, they are a more important cause of the profitability in those industries than their mere numbers would tell you. Why? Because an undocumented immigrant can be and is regularly abused by the employer. Yes. For the obvious reason, which if you have any contact with these folks, they'll tell you 10 different stories. I've heard them all. It's Friday afternoon. Everybody's going to pick up their check at the front office before they go home. Jose arrives. He stands in line, waits for his check. The boss says, Jose, we've had a terrible week. We didn't make the money. I can't pay you this week. But if you come back next week, I can be sure to pay you. What is Jose going to do? Answer, nothing. He dare not go to any government office because he's an undocumented. He can't show a paper. He can't show a residence allowance, nothing. He's terrified of going anywhere near the labor office. There's nothing he can do. And the employer knows it. The employers look for these people because of this. And I'm not going to take your time and mine to talk about the abuse, sexual and other, that this situation invites in all the ways you don't need me to tell you about. Okay, now let's imagine you deport them. First of all, that costs billions, because you're talking about 10 to 12 million people. You have to house them. You have to move them. You have to feed them in the process. You have to deal with the umpteen million lawsuits that will immediately crop up around all of this. This is going to take time and is going to cost personnel and it's going to be an immense expense. But that's the least of it. Here comes the big one. Every one of those industries is a crucial player in the inflation level of the United States. Who's going to pick the lettuce? Who's going to pick the fruit? Who's going to do all that work? Who's going to clean the dishes in the back of the restaurant? Who's going to clean up at the end, the evening when the patrons of the restaurant go home? Well, the answer is you either close the restaurant, and that has economic consequences, or you close the farms, and that's really not an option, or you're going to have to hire Americans. And Americans won't be afraid to go to the labor office if you don't pay them. So you're going to actually have to pay them. And you're probably going to have to pay them a good bit more than the immigrant for all the reasons you normally pay immigrants less than native workers, which means the cost structure of these industries is going to take off. And you know what they're all going to do, those employers? They're going to raise their prices. They're going to want to do that to recapture the extra costs that will come. And the government has not proposed anything that will substitute here. I've heard one professor tell me, oh, we don't have to worry. AI will take care of this. You know what AI does? It makes people like you and me superfluous. But are we ready to go and wash dishes at the back of the restaurant? Are we ready to pick apples? Really? You're gonna cause social upheaval. You're gonna cause inflation. Mr. Trump can't do that. Inflation is half of why he got elected.
True.
How can he turn around and then be the person who has to go on TV and try to explain why he promised to deal with inflation, only it's gotten worse? And he won't be able to tell the truth. It's because I'm deporting everybody, because then the argument will be as clear as day for people. So you're going to have to watch now as the various cabinet secretaries, bizarre though they are, have to undo what it was he's promised.